Welcome to Sex Ed with DB. I'm your host, DB. Let's get into it. Magic Wand's story begins in 1968, a full year before we landed on the moon and about 6 months before bell-bottoms were trendy the first time. This is when the Magic Wand, the original personal massager, was first introduced, and I am so glad it was. No one expected that this unassuming device would soon become one of the world's most recognizable products. The Magic Wand Original exemplifies the phrase icon, and now it shares the spotlight with 3 equally impressive models. Magic Wand Plus, a corded variable speed massager, Magic Wand Rechargeable, a cordless multifunction device, and the first ever Magic Wand Mini, a new, compact, adorable, rechargeable massager. Every product that bears the Magic Wand name features the legendary power and historic pleasure that took the world by storm more than half a century ago. My personal favorite Magic Wand is the original. They sell millions every year, and for good reason. It's powerful and brings so much pleasure in all the right places. Want to get a discount on this amazing powerhouse? Go to sexedwithdb.com/magicwand to learn more. Here are my top 3 favorite things I love about Uberlube. Number 1, Uberlube makes sex feel a lot more pleasurable. It's as simple yet as powerful as that. Number 2, Uberlube is recommended by leading doctors, and its body-friendly ingredient list is widely used by people with sensitivities to lubricants. And number 3, Uberlube will not stain clothing or bedding. Any spills can be easily cleaned with detergent and water. Get your bottle of Uberlube now with code SEXEDWITHDB for 15% off at uberlube.com. If you're someone who has experienced painful periods, listen up. First of all, you are not alone. While painful periods are common, you should know that they are not normal. Here's where the Period Pain Clinic by Day comes in. The Period Pain Clinic offers a 360-degree plan to tackle period pain with a personalized pain relief routine, support from vetted specialists, access to innovative treatments, fast-track diagnosis of your gynecological health conditions, clinically proven lifestyle recommendations, and more. You'll also learn about conditions that could be affecting your period, such as PCOS, fibroids, endometriosis, and more. Go to www.yourday.com and use code SEXEDWITHDB for 15% off at checkout. We talk a lot about sex ed, but when we're shopping for products to support our sexual wellness, exploration, and expression, we head to the experts at Lion's Den. For 50 plus years, Lion's Den has been a leader in adult products. Whether you want to explore a new kink or add a little romance to your evening, Lion's Den has something for all. Each location is brightly lit and staffed with the very best experts in pleasure, passion, and romance, so you can feel comfortable and confident in your purchases. Lion's Den is offering our listeners 15% off your purchase in-store and online using code SEXEDWITHDB at lionsden.com. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another wonderful team episode. We have the whole crew here. We haven't all gotten together in a couple weeks now, so I'm excited that we're all back. I feel like the last episode was about the threesome in the Challengers film. Still on my mind, of course. No, I'm just kidding. It's not really. On to bigger and better things, like birth control. And so today, Kathy is going to be leading. And I'll go ahead and just pass the ball right over to you, Kathy. Go ahead. You're today's host.
Great. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Kathy. I'm Sex Ed with DB's comms lead, and I'm really excited for our topic today, which is anti-birth control influencers, and how that has become kind of more of a trend in social media content. And so I wanted to get us started with a note, which is kind of what we're talking about when we're saying anti-birth control influencers, because as we've talked about a lot on the podcast, and as I'm sure people have experienced, birth control can actually suck. And there's a lot of content about birth control being bad that is accurate and medically backed. And that's not really what we're talking about today. We're talking about kind of this like proliferation of false and really biased information about birth control that has kind of a purpose behind it. But with that in mind, since we on the podcast have talked in the past about birth control not being the best, I wanted to do our like team intro, our unclothed, betrothed, and loathed for this episode to be different birth control methods. So folks can, acknowledge that some forms of birth control are not great for them or that they've had legitimate problems with. And then we can talk more kind of about this other thing that we're really focusing on for the episode today, which is this misinformation and kind of biased information about birth control. So whatever order people want to go. DB, do you want to start?
Yeah, let's do it. Okay, so maybe we'll do, like condoms, the pill, and the implant.
Implant or IUD. So I was kind of doing like the tiers of effectiveness. Like you have like the barrier methods, you have the hormonal methods, and then you have the long acting reversibles like the IUDs and the implants. But if there's another form that is less common that you want to talk about, go for it.
No, I love the idea of just doing like LARCs as the umbrella, long acting reversible contraceptives. So I'm going to say I loathe the pill. I think like the pill is wonderful for many people. Very #blessed finally that we have the over-the-counter pill. O-pill, fucking finally, over 100 countries have had access to over-the-counter birth control for many years now, and it is due time for the US to have that. However, you got to take it every day at the same time. I just never really enjoyed myself on the pill, so I'm just going to go ahead and loathe that one right off the bat. I'm going to unclothe condoms. That's a pun, but not intended. You gotta rip open the wrapper and put the condom on. But I just think that condoms are so wonderful, and they are a dual protection method. They, work to prevent STIs and unwanted pregnancy at the same time. So that's great. And then I'm gonna betroth LARCs. I think people really love LARCs. They can stay in your body for years, depending on the LARC, up to even like 10 years, depending on what it is. And so those are definitely really fantastic methods for people in order to get their reproductive needs met. And I'll pass it over to Sadie.
I'm going to unclothe condoms. I think condoms are a really underrated form of birth control. Everyone here knows when used correctly, they're super effective and accessible. And I kind of think they've gotten this rep as like, oh, it's risky to only use condoms. But when used correctly, that's really not true. I'm going to say betroth the implant. That's kind of the birth control I've settled on. I have the one in my arm, and I've gotten it changed once, which was kind of freaky. But other than that, it's just been smooth sailing. Like, I barely have periods, and I haven't really had any negative side effects. So love my implant. And I'm going to loathe the pill. I don't know. Blessings to anyone who is functional enough to be able to take a pill at the exact same time every day, but I am not that person.
People are organized out there.
Yeah.
Detail oriented.
Well, that person is me. I am going to betroth the pill.
She's been quiet for some time now because she's like, oh God, I need to tell them the pill is for me.
The one on the outs on that. So I'm going to betroth the pill. I've been on it since 12 years. I've been on the pill. I think I've taken like a year off.
Nearly a bat mitzvah's worth.
Yeah.
Nearly becoming a woman.
For 13. Is 13? 15. 15. 13.
Yeah, 13.
And I'm going to unclothe condoms and loathe LARCs. Just not for me. I'm terrified. I've heard horror stories, and not prepared, especially when the pill's working fine for me. So yeah, that's me.
I feel like I have similar, but for different reasons. Maybe I'm going to do betroth the IUD, which is what I have, because I feel like I've committed to it, but I wouldn't be like, this is the sexiest thing. Yay, IUDs. So I wouldn't say I would unclothe it. I have had one that I ejected and didn't know because it was COVID. So that's always scary.
No.
And it's just like, it's an incredibly painful process to get it put in, but then you just don't have to think about it. And I also don't get periods, which is great. I will do unclothe the pill then, because I just got sick of taking something every day, but I don't think this would be my last IUD, I'll say. And I will loathe condoms. I just feel like that has not been my preferred method throughout my life. I've been in a relationship for 10 years. And so I'm like, let's do these long acting ones. And not have to, similar to the pill, not have to do something every single time.
Totally fair. Wow. Look at that. We're a team for a reason. We have these different ideas. And yeah, I think like what you said, Kathy, in the beginning, right, is an important piece of information about like we as people who have been on these contraceptives, like most people I know, including myself, and I've talked about this at length on podcast episodes, have had some sort of negative experiences with birth control. And that really sucks. And I wish that didn't happen. And at the same time, like that's not everyone's reality. And it's really great when people find methods that work great for them and for their reproductive journeys. So yeah, I wanted to really elaborate on that little piece of info from the beginning.
Yeah. And I think that's a great transition into our topic for today, because I think, right, like we're all very informed people about reproductive health. We've explored our options. We have different opinions and we have negative experiences with different forms of birth control. And we've also talked about in the past how like there has been very little development in this area, right? Like the pill has largely not changed in 40, 50 years. There hasn't been like a bunch of new forms of birth control. I guess maybe the implant might be a newer form. And it just kind of sucks that this is like the limited options that we have. And there's always something that is negative or can be negative for certain people. And it's sort of that fact that allows the kind of content we're going to talk about today to reach a really willing audience, because people are rightly frustrated with their options. And like various other things, they turn to the internet to try to find better information. And instead of being met with kind of like evidence-backed or like doctor or physician or any sort of medical professional led information, they are finding influencers who may or may not be giving accurate information and may or may not have a motivation behind what they are saying on the internet. So that to say, so right, we're not talking about like the pill made me moody, my IUD really hurt. Like these are all things that there's a strong evidence base. We know that this is legitimate. These are legitimate complaints. What we're talking about really is this like content that has a lot of false information. And so I wanted to kind of ground us in some of the sorts of claims that we're talking about that are becoming more common on the internet. These are claims about birth control causing issues from things like infertility, making abortion more likely, which is kind of like a moral argument that you sometimes hear, like, well, birth control makes people more promiscuous, and so now we're going to have more abortions, which obviously is like very circular reasoning, but you know, the thinking of the people making these statements. I saw some of the content that was being discussed in this as like calling the pill the divorce pill. And I think this was an interesting one. I remember hearing this as a kid, that like birth control makes you attracted to different people. And so like if you fall in love with someone while you're on the pill and then you go off, you could be like, oops, I chose the wrong person. I remember that myth, and I actually had not heard it debunked until I started doing the research for this episode. So I thought that was really interesting. You know, even us who hear this stuff and be like, yeah, sure.
And then also big yikes on that one. I think like that in particular is so funny to me, because it just probably comes from men being like, oh, my wife is gonna leave me if so I'm insecure. Like it's just so clear that you can trace that back to like one man who's insecure who just like had enough money and power to like get that myth out there. That's just wild. Please keep going. But
well, and it's funny you say that too, because the one man thing too, another one that was the next one was going to be birth control makes people unattractive, which is something that Elon Musk keeps tweeting. So that's frustrating and obviously not true.
Somebody help him. Is he is unwell. I don't know what. Oh God.
Yeah. I mean, I think you also talked about, right, like going back to insecurity, we can talk later about like how much this content is connected with like trad wife content and this like proliferate, like people being like, we need to have more babies. There's not enough babies. I think there's a connection there. So we can talk about that. But I also wanted to mention kind of the other sort of flavor of this is all like, as you've just identified, sort of feeling like very like misogynistic, very kind of right wing, misinformation, women shouldn't be able to have sex. But the other kind of flavor of this content is people just saying like, oh, well, birth control is unsafe. Birth control is unnatural. I don't want to have chemicals in my body. Your body is completely made out of chemicals, but that's like a buzzword that you hear in wellness culture. And so we have this like convergence of this more like traditional kind of right-wing type language, and then wellness influencers who again are like coming from probably this good place of like the general medical system has failed them, but then they're presenting false information and making people afraid of hormones. So that's kind of the other type of misinformation here. I did a little bit of digging of like, is this really like a trend? Is this like a new thing? And there were a couple of studies that are showing, yes, like there is more content like this than in past years. There are doctors who have been studied who've reported more and more of their patients are coming to appointments with misinformation about birth control that they said they learned on the internet. There are some studies analyzing actually like looking at content on YouTube or Twitter or TikTok and seeing how much of it is negative and how that has changed over time, and finding more and more posts are negative about birth control over time. And then also finding that the engagement actually kind of goes along these lines as well. So most of this content is made by individual people who have used birth control but don't necessarily have a medical background. And that content does better, gets more engagement than content from actual medical experts. So that is one, yes, there is an increase. Another kind of connection here is a lot of this content recommends fertility awareness-based methods of contraception, which is things like, taking your temperature, which is very finicky. It can work, but it's very finicky, and requires you to take your temperature at the exact same time every day and not have like stretched too much because that'll raise your body temperature. Like very, very difficult. Or just things like just tracking your cycle on a calendar, which is obviously even less effective. The kind of highest success rate for fertility awareness-based methods is a failure rate of 23%, which is obviously much higher than any of these other forms we were talking about. And then, we talked about this convergence of these like conservative influences. I mentioned Elon Musk, but also just like overt conservative talking people like Ben Shapiro, Candace Owens, the anti-abortion movement. They are also all kind of sowing misinformation and distrust in birth control. Peter Thiel has a right-wing women's magazine and also a period tracking app, which is scary. That is emphasizing fertility-based awareness. So it's important to think about where you're getting this information if you don't want to be pregnant. And obviously right now is an incredibly important time in the US for people to not get pregnant if they don't want to be, with rollbacks of reproductive rights more generally. And so we got to talk about it. I will say, I think maybe the original article I sent you too, the influence maybe is not actually having like an effect in people's use of birth control. The data that we have from insurers is showing that actually birth control use is up in the US, which makes sense if you look around. But there's a lot of there was so many articles I found looking for this topic. There's so much people are discussing the fact that this content is proliferating. And obviously, if you go online and you see this, you're not going to be like, let me go see if people are actually using birth control from the data from the insurers. You're just going to think that this is something that is a trend and might be right for you. So I wanted to start us there to talk about this. If anybody has sort of like initial thoughts, just feel free to dive in, but also just like, were you familiar with this content before? Have you seen it? I think it's interesting when this kind of content creeps into our algorithms, because I'm sure we all have sort of like repro positive algorithms. And I don't think at their face, some of this content might look like it is consistent with the kind of information we're seeking out. So first reactions, and have you seen this before?
I'll have a go just because, one, I'm based in the UK, but I had not really seen this like trend to the extent until I started researching for this episode. And I was shooketh when I did. It is wild.
Hashtag
it is
shooketh.
like a repackaged, because I was kind of swept up in the whole, that's like spiritual wellness thing that happened maybe like 5 years ago that kind of convinced me to go off the pill for the first time in like, I think at that time it was like 8 years then. Because I had this like fear mongering around like the hormones and like the shame about not trying to heal myself naturally. And I got like wrapped up in that one. And this feels like a repackaging of it, where it's kind of just going after whatever choice we've made for our bodies type of thing and trying to find any cracks to shame that and to fear monger. And then, of course, I still think it's coming after women's rights and people with vulvas, reproductive rights, but they can't do it all at once. Obviously, they're trying to, like, the abortion is happening in America and stuff like that, but it's like, this is a small way to start chipping away at it, which might not get us as worked up because it doesn't feel like it's taking away from everyone immediately, but it is like a chipping away of it. So yeah, those are my first thoughts.
Yeah, like I hadn't really seen this stuff either. So I'm kind of horrified. And I think, it's no coincidence that this stuff is on the uptick at the same time that reproductive rights are just, more limited than they have been in decades in America. Like, it's hard to not sound conspiratorial when talking about this stuff. I think that's one of the hard things because from where I'm sitting, it all feels part of the same agenda around control of bodies and limiting women's options, women and AFAB people's options. So, okay, they know abortion is less accessible than it's been in a long time. Why not take out birth control too?
And like, Kathy, you sent over a TikTok, right? Of like, oh, this is someone who's explaining, hey, like, I know because I'm someone who gets money for pro-repo rights content that there's money on the against side. And I'm embarrassed to say I had not thought about that. I mean, obviously, you assume that like organizations and certain individuals are behind this, but I hadn't thought about the fact that there probably is equally, if not way more money. I'd be curious to see that actually, like how much money on the right side is going to influencers to make this content because, my career exists because I'm able to get money from pro reproductive health movement and organizations and grants and things like that. And how many more influencers on the other side exist because of that money and that opportunity. And so it's all business also at the end of the day, which is like part of this like patriarchal capitalism structure, obviously, of just kind of like, it's all about the dollars and like they're looking at the same measurements that we are, which is like how many people are going to our website to get access, how many people are going to their websites to sign petitions to remove access. And it's just like a tit for tat.
It's all about the dollar and fear makes money. Fear gets clicks. If you scare people about something that they thought was normal and like, oh, I thought this was totally safe and okay because that's what my doctor told me, but now I'm learning maybe not. Like, that's going to get clicks and generate attention, no matter how false and misleading it might be.
Mm-hmm. And I don't want to open up a whole other can of worms at this second. However, I want to plant a seed because a lot of people in like the tech communities obviously are talking about the movement of AI and how it is improving and how misinformation and scams and things that we are just so not ready for will only get a million times worse in about 5 years, right? And it's just like, what's going to happen to us when this is the misinformation from people that's coming out of people's mouths? What is going to happen when AI is able to learn from all of that data and spit out the most effective way to lie to people? Like, we are fucked. I am very concerned about that.
Yeah, I think the money thing, there's two varieties of it too. And I'll start with kind of the more insidious because I feel like we all recognize that is bad, right? Like the conservative movement influence, right? There is so much more money in like politics, in overturning Roe v. Wade, in opposing abortion. They're so much more organized. They have camps for their judges so that everybody who enters a federal judgeship is like, I promise I'll never rule in favor of abortion. That is incredibly well funded. And I think to your point about that TikTok, I feel like we are just now on the other side being like, ooh, we gotta do this like grassroots influencer type stuff. We need to think about the youth. I think the conservative movement has actually done a way better job, like trying to recruit young people to their side. Maybe because they recognize that they need to do that in order for their ideas to stay like with a hold. And so there's that. There's like the political money, and I think that's very obviously bad. But then there's also, like you said, DB, just like the business side of it. And something I hadn't been thinking about until I saw that TikTok too was like how many people I think this is what gets into my algorithm more than like my algorithm is not going to show me like Ben Shapiro and think I'm going to be convinced by him.
Thank God.
But is right. Thank you, algorithm. But is influencers using like natural cycles, I feel like is something I've seen a huge increase in. And I hadn't actually made that connection before. But this influencer I've been following for years, she used it to not get pregnant, to get pregnant. It obviously worked for her. But like I mentioned, even if you have the like $300 basal thermometer, you gotta be incredibly precise for that to work for you. And the failure rate for perfect use is still just going to be so much higher. So if you're somebody who there's no other options, maybe that's the right option for you. But I was just thinking of like how much money is going for that I may or may not be connected in any way to these other movements we're talking about, but it's just a company that's trying to make money right out there. Like Natural Cycles is a for-profit company, like other healthcare. And maybe that's how we got into this mess. But I hadn't been thinking about the connection there. And like, they're really trying to sell you a product. They don't actually care if you are going to end up with the pregnancy outcome that you most prefer. I guess they do if it starts to get a backlash on social media or something like that.
Only if it affects them. That's when they care.
Exactly. It's the bottom line. And so that was something I hadn't really been putting together. I don't think those influencers are like right-wing plants who are trying to like work with those people, but that the money, the business money there too. And I mean, at its heart, I think that's a tech company, the AI connection too. There's a lot of this, like, we're going to hack the system and we're going to make something better that's not necessarily connected to like the industries they're trying to disrupt.
This is also like kind of going down another tangent, but you have a note here, Kathy, about like, women's healthcare is shitty. Like we haven't developed better birth control methods. And like for years and years, right? Like male birth control has been kind of like on the docket. They've done some research, but when they got symptoms and side effects, they decided they didn't want to do it. Right. So part of me just wonders, like part of my optimistic side wonders if male birth control does become more normal and does become more common, what could our landscape look like if that is a much more easy, much more normal, common thing? Like, part of me wonders if the conservative agenda would even allow that to get that far, because the whole idea is controlling women's bodies. So if you can't do that, then what's their, reasoning for moving forward and propelling a male birth control, product and movement? I don't really see it happening, but curious to get your thoughts.
That reminds me of one other thing I wanted to mention, and that Em kind of started to touch upon with like your own experience with kind of like anti-hormone content too, which is, I think there's a connection here that could apply regardless of people's gender or sex assigned at birth, which is trying to sow fear in hormones generally. And that's like the kind of right-wing side of it, right? Is like the same people who are trying to now go after birth control are the people going after trans healthcare as well. And so the more that they can say like, hey, these hormones are unsafe and like young people shouldn't be on hormones, or like it's unnatural, that is all rhetoric that is also helping people be skeptical of gender affirming care and of hormone treatment as well. And so I think, yes, I do think that like the misogyny and the control of women's bodies is kind of at the core, but inherent in that ideology is like, you were born with these chromosomes or these body parts, this is what your life looks like, and you can't change that. And it goes to the transphobia as well.
And like altogether gender essentialist, like, yeah, like you were born to live a certain role in our society and serve a certain purpose. And yeah, I my mind is blown by the connection between over legislating around HRT and trans healthcare and this kind of fear mongering around birth control.
Ever since getting engaged to my wonderful fiance, I've been thinking about ways to keep things fun and novel between us, but I, of course, want it to feel organic. I want to be able to feel sexy and comfortable in my body while trying something new. Thanks to Lion's Den, a new adventure I've been exploring is the world of lingerie. I never really was a big lingerie girl myself, but once I started trying on lingerie that accentuated my curves, felt super soft to the touch, and made me look in the mirror and felt wildly confident in my skin, that changed pretty quickly. Plus, when I searched for what I might like on Lion's Den's website, I saw models that actually looked like me. They were curvy and thick and voluptuous, and it made all the difference to see models that have my body type. Want to join me in my new lingerie chapter? Right now, you can use code SEXED with DB for 15% off your purchase in-store and online at lionsden.com. Follow them on social media at Lions Den Adult on IG and TikTok for exclusive offers, deals, and giveaways. I'm worried. I mean, we should already be worried. Things are really bad here in the US. I mean, we're recording this episode, in July 2024. We'd be remiss not to talk about the election for a moment, right? I mean, I think that is a big thing where when we're getting kind of the signals that, over and over again, our Supreme Court doesn't care about us, our government doesn't care about us, we are potentially, knock on wood, fucking I hope not, but about to elect a man that very clearly wants to actively continue to strip these rights away from queer people, from women, for people with vulvas. What do we do? I don't know. Is there a DEFCON 5 situation where we kind of talk about, okay, well, is this just is it just kind of connecting with more health influencers that are on the pro side and figuring out how to get smarter and how to get more organized? Is it putting our dollars somewhere? Is it all of the above? Kathy, what do we do? Solve our problems.
This is a real macro solution, but I think you got to expand the Supreme Court. But the steps to get there are far, because
this is coming from a lawyer, folks. She's a lawyer.
Legislation passed before the election. No, I mean, I think it's your point. We're sitting here days after a bunch of really extremist Supreme Court arguments, some of which started poking at marriage equality. We've had a couple of abortion cases where they're saying abortion is never necessary for people's health. That was in the Alito dissent. There's no situation where you need an emergency abortion. It's obviously not medically true, but we have these non-elected lifetime appointment judges making medical decisions for the country. And in the other abortion case this term too, the abortion pill, there's a lot of this we haven't tested the effects of these hormones or these medicines on women and girls. It's the same kind of rhetoric of starting to sow the seeds that this kind that reproductive health care is unsafe, that the pills are somehow unsafe. So yes, I think it's an apt connection. Yeah, I mean, I'll just say for the election, the next president is going to pick at least 2 Supreme Court justices. If we lose more Supreme Court justices, there's very little we can do in any branch of government because they'll be able to overturn anything Congress does, anything a president does. So I'm voting for the Supreme Court.
Maybe we move to the UK to be with M. I don't know.
I was just abroad. I was can I stay here?
It is
scary
terrifying stuff. I mean, the UK has been way better, but in our upcoming election as well, we have normally it's the Tories, our Conservatives, that are out for trans rights and out for all of that queer rhetoric that we hear, and then Labour jumped on that as well. So you're fucked either way as well at the moment here, and it's always the lesser of two evils, it seems, as well here. But it's just again this this whole damned if you do and damned if you don't. I can't believe that there's parallels happening where it's you're not allowed an abortion and now you also can't have birth control, and it's just it's just pushing you towards sex is only for making babies and it's only for procreation, and therefore sex is about penis and vagina. And it's like pushing these narratives and reinforcing them to be like, you should only be having sex when it's with someone you're going to be happily raising a child with. And that is what sex is about, instead of pleasure, and pushing these ideas of like being promiscuous. And it's just, it's a really terrifying conversation to be a part of, because I'm just sat here like, what are we going to do? And the fact that influencers, like wellness influencers, have so much power and are abusing that, and the fact that there's like not enough. It's so funny because like these social media platforms are so quick to censor when it is accurate education, and there's apparently like infrastructure to be censoring quickly when someone says vulva, but somehow this misinformation can go on and be reshared and remixed for so long. It's like there has to be an agenda, like someone has to be behind it and letting it slip through the cracks that it's happening. Yeah, so scary.
I don't know how it will help us like in this upcoming election, but I don't know. One thing I think about a lot is that the right, like, you know, for as despicable as I find their policies and their ideology and everything, I think the right is a lot better at coalition building than the left. And I think that's part of the reason they have these political wins and they gain this power, because I think the right, especially on the internet, is keen on welcoming anybody into the fold, right? They're not choosy. It's like, oh, do you respond to this message? Like, are you scared about protecting kids and making sure our women are safe from evil hormones or whatever? Like, come on in. Like, they put out that fear-mongering message and welcome in anybody who responds to it. Whereas I think the left often is more choosy, and it's like you have to know a certain amount to be let into the club, and like we only want to build political coalition with people that like we 100% like and trust and everything. But yeah, like I just don't think it's a coincidence that the right is so successful at building online and building ranks. And I think the left long term should sort of look at their notebook paper and copy off of it a little bit. That's just my take.
Oh, the right is more inclusive. They're so sweet. They let
so
everyone
much for the
in.
tolerant left,
right?
I mean, I think, okay, transitioning just for a hot second though, because Kathy, you have some notes here about like this negativity bias on social. And I think that is, you know, that is a little bit a separate issue. Like we're talking about like influencers who are maybe like, you know, backed with funds and potential organizations who are giving out this message. And at the same time, you know, people who do go to social media who are sharing their negative birth control experiences. Can you speak to like, why are people kind of internalizing those a little bit more than maybe the experience of being like, I took my birth control pill today and it went just fine? Like, why is that content not getting out there?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think some of it is just like the nature of social media, right? Is like people don't go make a TikTok about like, I took my pill today and it was great. Like maybe here I went and got my IUD and it was like way better experience than I thought it was going to be. But that's like something that people are doing every, 5 years or something like that. I think it's just like the nature of social media to a certain extent that people go there to complain. And I think that kind of goes to what Sadie was just saying too about like the right being more engaging or sticky or like just drawing people in more. So much of right-wing politics is outright outrage based, right? Like we've been talking about trans people and gender affirming care. Like there is no harm being caused by trans people that conservatives can point to. They're just like scared and angry. And that is very compelling content for people who either like feel like they're getting left behind or just like are confused or mad. So I think there's like some psychology just there of like negativity bias, right? Is like a real psychological concept of like small negative things are more front of mind, are stuck in your brain longer than larger positive things. Like the ocean that you're swimming in is the positive, and like you run into the one negative thing and that's the thing that you're perceiving instead of being like, I'm surrounded by water, things are good. And I think that the right does a really good job kind of capitalizing on that. And like Sadie said, kind of just like accepts whatever you want to come complain about like how wokeness has gone too far. I mean, woke doesn't even mean any one thing anymore, right? Like, it's like anything that you're mad about in modern America, you can be like, that's woke. And they're like, yeah, you're with us now.
Right. Exactly.
So I think there's like they're just kind of like all an equal opportunity complaint about modern society. And it's hard to counter that directly. Like, we could try to be more inclusive. We can try to, I think what you said, Sadie, about like not having these like, oh, you said one word wrong, now you're out, you're definitely one of them, is like something that can be worked on. But it's sort of like, if you're trying to be positive psychologically, people just don't pay as much attention to that.
Totally. Yeah, I think like generally speaking, I'm thinking a few things just in terms of kind of like, potentially ending this episode on if you're listening and you're like, this fucking sucks, what can I do? Like, we're going to offer you a couple of solutions here to not feel so hopeless, because honestly, like, I do this work full time because I believe in it and because I think that people deserve to have good information. They deserve to have bodily autonomy. And if you think that too, then like there are other people and organizations out there that you can get with, volunteer with, donate $100 a month to, become a recurring, donator to these places who are getting the message and getting physical pills and abortion information out there to people, because those organizations need your help.
And most people do agree with that. I think it's important. Like, I think it's really easy to get bogged down in we're losing, obviously, at like the political level. But when you go directly to the people, or when you look at polling, most people don't want abortion to be banned, much less birth control. Birth control is incredibly popular with like all religions, with all people of all political, like the majority of Republicans support birth control. The majority of Catholics, even though Catholicism in theory doesn't support birth control, the majority of American Catholics use birth control.
Mm-hmm.
And so we actually do have the numbers. It's just translating that in some way. And some of the ways that we have seen successes is like when you get ballot initiatives that actually go to the people and an individual person gets to vote and it's a majority vote, those are passing. And so there is some strategy that can be done. And then I think, like you were just mentioning, DB, right? Like these support networks, community care, right? Like there are these communities and networks out there that are designed to help people get care. And in the meantime, while we can't rely on systems of power to be doing that, we can be supporting each other.
I also just want to
go ahead,
maybe dip our toes like quickly into like a potential positive here. And that is that if this anti-birth control, or if birth control in itself is having its moment and people are complaining about being let down by the pill or whatever's happened to them, there is an opportunity for the rest of us to be like, hey, but it wasn't the IUD's fault, or it wasn't the pill's fault. It wasn't that form, like it was your doctor's fault. It was the system. It was the fact that you didn't get the education on like all your options. It was the fact that our GPs don't have enough medical training in like anything to do with sexual reproductive health. Like those are the systems we need to be going after. And the energy that, if you take this energy that we're giving to anti-birth control, and if you actually look into it, it's like, it's not the birth control's fault. It's not their problem. It didn't work for you. And the fact that you had like gloomy days because you were on one version of the pill and you didn't know that there were a plethora of other formulas of that exact same pill, or like loads of different options of birth control. Like instead of going like birth control in itself sucks, it's like there is this opportunity that hopefully we'll see more people. And I've seen in my research, like, more GPs and gynaes being like, this is just a hook. And then like, you can use that hook to then be like, they're wrong. Like, this isn't actually right. And hopefully that it's giving like fertility and like gynecologists and, all of those doctors and specialists now opportunities to hop on a train and actually like change the narrative. So hopefully there's enough of us doing that in those roles to shine the light where it should be, because then we're all on the same team. It's like we've all been let down by the same systems, but let's go after them instead of this little packaged white pill, So yeah.
Yes, Totally. And we've been really negative, I feel like, about the algorithm like censoring this information and things like that. But the fact that we're having this conversation in an era where like people can open an app on their phone and maybe the first content they get isn't going to be great, but like there's so much more information on the internet than when we were kids trying to figure this out. That is actually very powerful. Like it's maybe hard to find the accurate content, but in general, health information is way more accessible than it has been in the past. And that's going to be a hard thing to try to ban, to try to prevent people from getting access to information on the internet. It just practically, they're not going to shut down all birth control information on the internet.
I have two more things to shout out, and then would love to hear just like last thoughts from everyone. But number one, like I know we kind of talked about this in Unclothed, Betrothed, and Loathed, but condoms, guys. We need to remember that condoms are a really fantastic birth control method that do not have hormones in them if your body doesn't react well to hormones. And you can buy them anywhere. You can go to CVS, you can go to the corner store, like obviously like birth control is still available today, July 2024, and people are able to access it in the US. And we need to remember that condoms also are a powerful choice that you have at your disposal to be able to buy or get for free at certain organizations. And the second thing I want to shout out is Planned Parenthood, because Planned Parenthood is one of those organizations that does hand out free condoms that you can go on their website and learn everything that you need to know about different birth control methods. They have really great pamphlets. They have like little blurbs. They have videos. They just have really great information and education. And Kathy, like you said, we have the ability, most people in the US have a smartphone or access to the internet to be able to go and find that information for yourself before you decide on what method is good for you. So condoms and Planned Parenthood are the two things that I wanted to say. This is a very important episode, but hopefully people after listening to this don't feel so downtrodden. Like hopefully you feel empowered to, report that fucking shitty content that you see that's anti-birth control, like comment like this is false. Like you have the power to also like fight back against this misinformation. My last kind of thought here is like, just don't stop talking about it. Like every opportunity that we have to talk about the efficacy of birth control and how important it is that everyone has access to the method that works for them. Like that's what we should continue to be talking about. And same thing with abortion, same thing with any or other sort of reproductive rights, education and access. Like we should just be continuing to keep our ears out for what's going on and keep talking about it.
This is it's not my sentiment. I stole this from a webinar I was watching earlier about the abortion decisions that came out. But I thought it was really impactful, which is so long these topics have been kind of taboo and not as out in the open as they are now, especially around abortion. But I think around all sorts of reproductive health care, like, would you have been having a conversation about your IUD experience 10 years ago? Maybe not. One thing that like this being such a crisis has caused that I think is actually like a silver lining is people are telling their stories now. Like it is so much more of a topic of conversation. I spent years yelling at the TV during presidential debates for people to say the word abortion or ask about abortion. And now it's like you watch the CNN debate and they say abortion 500 times. And there's power in that. There's power in the fact that it's like no longer this taboo silent thing. It's unfortunately because we are losing something, but it has made it an opportunity for people to be really vocal and talk about their experiences and talk about the ways that these systems have let them down. And so I think there is power in just the visibility. And I return to what you were saying, DB, of just like not stop talking about it. I think having this platform for that is really powerful. And I'm glad to see that people are at least having these conversations and people are paying more attention. So hopefully we can find each other and build some power out of that.
Yes. And listener, your homework is to just do a quick Google search after this episode and see what's going on in your state with reproductive health access, with abortion, with birth control. Is there, something you can be doing in your free time or with $5 a month that you can be contributing to a cause that you really believe in? And keep listening to us. We're not going to stop talking about this stuff. And yeah, we are so appreciative that you're here. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Our creator, host, and executive producer is me, Danielle Bezalel. Our communications lead is Cathren Cohen. Our producer is Sadie Lidji. Our marketing coordinator is Mitch Coburn. Our social media coordinator is M. Kirsty Frazier. Our music theme is by Hook Sounds. Thanks so much to our featured guests, partners, and listeners. Want to partner with us? Email us at sexedwithdb@gmail.com. Do you have a silly sex story to share, need some advice, or have thoughts on the episode you just heard? Give us a booty call for a chance to be featured on the podcast. Check the show notes for the details. For more sex ed content, follow us on IG at sexedwithdb podcast and on TikTok at sexedwithdb. Want to know your sex toy zodiac sign? Go to our link tree on our IG now. See you next time.